Thank you. Cool, we'll get started in just a minute. All right, yeah, honestly, I think everyone's probably here that's going to join, so let's get started. I will share my screen. And I guess we can start with the project level RFCs, which I have here. So starting at the bottom, we have move dashboard and blog RFCs to implemented directory. Do you want to talk about this one, Ryan?
There's nothing to talk about. It's 2 RFCs that have been implemented. Emily just needs to like review and merge the PR.
Okay, cool. Next, we have the RFC for Go Generate.
Yeah, so this is actually a different RFC than the one where there was active conversation about that build pack. This is on the project overall, and it's a proposal like following the official governance to bring the existing Go Generate build pack authored by Jen and others into Paketo community. Governance dictates that it requires 2 maintainer approvals, like 2 project maintainer approvals, which I think we have now. So this might kind of be a moot point.
Okay, cool. Is there anything that we need to do now for this?
I don't think so, because Ryan seems like you approved as one, and then I just gave approval as another. So should just get the wheels turning to actually take ownership of the repo.
Cool. Sounds good. All right, we have the Get Build Pack RFC. I don't know if Jen is here to talk about this or if anybody else wants to talk about it.
I took a look at this. It's, from what I understand, relatively straightforward. The idea is generally that you would introduce this new Git build pack at the front of your order grouping. And what it would do would be basically scan the .git directory in order to figure out like what the current commit SHA is. And then it would provide that commit SHA as a build time environment variable, and I guess also as a runtime environment variable. The advantage being, like in the example that's shown here, she can then use it at a later point to do things like bake it into, you know, a build time version of a compiled binary.
Cool. Does anybody have any questions about this RFC? All right, I'll take that silence as a no. And we have one more, which is propose RFC to restructure core DEPS governance from Kenny.
Yeah, I put this one on the agenda so we can talk about it.
All right, cool. Nice. So we can move over to the language specific RFCs. We have the Go Generate Build Pack RFC. Frankie, do you have any updates on this one?
I guess a question, what should happen with this? Because it's not really under discussion in the same way anymore. Should this pull request just be closed?
I think maybe it makes sense to wait until we transfer the repo into the community, and then you might be able to like put the issue or like reopen it on that repo specifically.
Works for me.
Cool. All right, moving on, we have the support running NPM scripts RFC. Do you have any updates on this one from last week, Arjun?
Yeah, so we discussed this last week, and a couple of changes. Like we received a few comments. So there were 2 changes. The first one is that we decided to delegate the actual implementation of what runs the NPM scripts to a separate build pack called node run script. And the second part is that we had discussion about whether we have to support the hook for people to run it in pre-install mode. And there doesn't really seem to be a use case for that right now. So the run scripts will happen after the installation of the modules. Yeah, so those are the two changes. So please take a look, and if you have any more comments, please go ahead.
Cool. So just to clarify, for now, we're not going to worry about the pre-install case and only the post-install.
Yes, if any community user, seems like if there's a real use case for that, and if somebody comes forward, yeah, we can support it. But for now, that doesn't seem to be the main use case with regards to like web frameworks. So we're not going to do that now.
Cool, that makes sense.
Quick question here. Arjun, I think I added a comment on the original RFC. Since there's going to be a new build pack for this, is there some way to like cache some of this stuff between builds? Like if I'm running like ng build or something on a subsequent build, would I be able to kind of skip that?
The run script like seems to be pretty arbitrary for these frameworks. I'm not pretty sure if we have anything there, but as an optimization, if we have more information, that's something we can think about. Yes.
Got it. Thanks. I'll add a comment.
Can you talk a little bit about why you decided to move it into a separate build pack rather than keeping it in the npm build pack?
Yeah, because we had to do the same thing for npm as well as yarn, and also like we didn't want users to like provide two separate environment variables, because they're both basically doing, although it's npm and yarn and they're two different things, they're just doing the same thing because it's the same package.json that the build pack will read, and there's not really a difference from like an external interface point of view. So it made quite sense. Also, the npm install build pack as of right now is a pretty bit complicated. It has these couple of other functions. It not only runs the install command, there's this npm ci command. There is also the rebuild command. So it made sense to make it like a separate one. So
Thanks for the background.
Cool. Are you waiting for any other approvals on this RFC?
yeah, if anybody has more comments, that would be welcome, and also the maintainer approvals.
Cool. Nice one. All right, I think that's all we had on the language specific side. So I will stop sharing and turn it over to, I think, Ryan for the Rust build pack team item on the agenda.
Yeah, it slipped my mind last week that I was supposed to decide on a team for the Rust build pack maintainership. I think it's going to be a pretty obvious and easy decision considering there was only one response to the discussion forum, which was Forrest put his name forward as a maintainer. So I think the only other approval we need is from Dan Makuza, who I think is on the call. Dan, if you approve, then I think we can get the ball rolling on the Rust team. We'll do all that, required administrative stuff to make that start happening.
Yeah, sounds great.
Cool. At some point today, I'll probably go ahead and set up that team, and then Dan, I will ping you and we can orchestrate how we'll do like repository transfer and all that kind of stuff.
Cool, sounds good.
Cool, thanks, Ryan. Next item we have is web servers build pack team.
Yeah, it's the same thing here. There was only one responder on the forum thread, which was Arjun. I think in this case, I'll throw out one last call if anyone is interested in joining as a maintainer for the web servers team. There's a second slot that's open.
Can you remind us which build packs are in that team right now?
Yeah, so the responsibilities for the web server maintainers would be the static file build pack and the HTTPD and Nginx build packs.
Sounds like a pretty sweet deal to me if anyone's interested.
I'd be open to hopping on.
Cool. Tim and Arjun, I'll talk to you a little bit later.
Cool. Next item is Paketo bot first robots team.
Yeah, I put that one up. I was talking about this with Emily a little bit yesterday, but there's a robots team in the Paketo Buildpacks org, which contains just the Paketo bot itself. And Emily was talking about potentially adding that robots team to each repo individually so that we can permission robots differently than humans. But it seems like the Paketo bot is on every single contributor's team except for the Java one. And so I was wondering kind of like what the expected or right practices there. Like, should we be adding bots to all our teams, or should we keep them off the teams and just put them in repos separately using the robots team?
I guess I was going to ask, what is the difference in the set of permissions you would give to the robot versus the contributors for a given repository?
Yeah, I could take a look at an example and see what our differences is. It's totally possible there aren't differences and we just set it up like this because you imagine there could be, right? Sorry, I feel like my video keeps freezing, or is it just freezing on my end? Let me fix that. Hold on. I'm checking the access 1 second. Yeah, so right now, like the Java on all of our repos, Java Buildpacks team, it has an admin role. I'm going to give the robot write access. So we do have a slightly different level of permissions. I'm not sure at the end of the day it's practically that different, but
I think that's probably the same,
it's the
though.
same. Yeah, the contributors across all of our language families only have write permissions. The main thing being like write permissions gives you the ability to do stuff like create branches and push commits to those branches, but doesn't give you access to like obviously administrator settings and stuff like that.
yeah, I think practically it's not really that different. And I'm not necessarily advocating that you all switch over. It just sort of came up as a topic because I assumed that that was the workflow that you guys were going to use, but instead we've been adding it to the teams, which is, I think it's fine. I don't have a strong preference. I'm happy to switch Java Buildpack to the other way. I guess we would have to actually make a separate contributors team, which we don't have right now. But yeah.
I guess originally when we made it, the thinking was that the bot is basically a contributor. They're just an automated robotic one instead of a one that's, a living, breathing, fleshy one.
Yeah, I could imagine like a world where you want to have robots with slightly different permissions than the humans, but it seems like practically that isn't the case. So it's not very important.
Is one of these options logistically easier than the other? Is there less friction with one, say for spinning up new repos or new teams than with the other, in y'all's experience?
So every time we create a new repo, we give the robots permissions on the repo. And the flip side of that is every time, like if you didn't do it with the robots team, it would be that every time you create a new team, you'd have to give the robot permission. Or if we had more than one robot, you have to give every robot permission.
Is it fair to say though that it's more common to create repos than new teams? So if we can find one that's like a robot per team, it sounds like it'd be easier than a robot per repo.
My experience at the end of the day, it's not all that different because when we create a new repo, we go and configure access in it anyways. So when we're adding the Java Buildpacks team, it's easy to just go ahead and add the robots team as well. But I don't think adding the robot to every team is that difficult either. I feel like it might just be, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
I think we have another case, which is also like we have a robotic or a Paketo bot reviewer bot that basically is also on the maintainers group for all the teams that we have, which basically will go ahead and like automatically review PRs that are submitted by the bot. The idea being that like the bot goes ahead and contributes a PR so that it's visible that you can look at a PR and see what the diff is. And it goes through the regular like PR channel and, gets tested by the branch protection rules, that kind of thing. But that we don't manually have to review and merge every PR that's opened by a bot.
Wait, so the reviewer bot only reviews PRs opened by the other Paketo bot, is that right?
Yeah, we've got a GitHub action that's like a auto review approve thing. And it basically just says like, was this PR opened by a bot? And like, were all the commits by a bot? And if that is true, then it'll say like, this is approved automatically.
That's cool.
Given the amount of time I spend merging bot PRs, I feel like that is convenient. It's an interesting workaround for the fact that I think you can't approve your own PR, right? Otherwise it'd be one bot. I do know that GitHub has you can configure auto merge after all checks have passed. And I'm not sure if you can set conditions on that, like only for certain authors and stuff like that, but it might be worth checking whether now that they've added some of these features to GitHub, it could be less convoluted and just use the GitHub features themselves.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Kenny.
I was gonna say it's built into GitHub that you cannot approve your own PR. I didn't know that was a thing. I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
It like doesn't count as one of the required approvals, even if you're a approver by the approval rules.
Gotcha.
But it doesn't stop you from merging it, right? You can just merge it without approvals.
You can admin merge it if you click the little check box that says you're doing something wrong.
Cool. Anything else on this?
Seems like everyone can keep doing what they're doing, I guess. And it doesn't matter which method you use. That's what I'm gathering.
Yeah, sounds accurate.
Cool.
Cool. Let's go on then to CoreDep's governance change.
Yeah, I put this one in here. I can share my screen, I guess. All right. Can everyone see this right now? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is more process and meta oriented, but since the beginning of our team, we haven't quite been following the like Paketo paradigm of maintainers and contributors, and right now we just have one big team, and so now that we got like a new engineer on the team, and are maybe going to start making more substantial changes, we kind of wanted to formalize some of these processes we have in place. And so we wanted to essentially split the core dependencies team into two teams that are stacks and dependencies. And we decided that we think it would be best if myself, Mark, and Marty were the maintainers of both of those teams. And then our new engineer, Brian, who's joining the project, would be a contributor for now. And as part of this, we also want to implement some of the the push guards that other repos have. So we're eliminating the ability to push to main, instead force PRs to be made so that we can maintain that discussion and that visibility, and just be in efforts to be more transparent and to be more along the lines of the other Paketo kind of like architecture and organization around this stuff. And yeah. So we also, we have our own bot currently in the repo, and we wanted to start moving to just only using the Paketo reviewer bot everywhere. So that's another part of this, and just kind of standardize across these different processes. And yeah, and then finally, yeah, just remove the existing core dependencies team. Because another issue with that is like core dependencies is almost strictly like a VMware concept and doesn't really map to anything open source in the Paketo community. So we want to make that clearer as well. And yeah, the unsolved questions, exact processes around contributors become maintainers. But that's kind of can be solved by just following the standard that other the repos have set and what you folks are doing on your teams. So it seems like there's an established answer to that question. I just didn't know it off the top of my head. And that's pretty much it. Are there any questions or comments around this? Okay, cool. Then I guess, yeah, I think it's ready for review. If the steering committee wants to take a look at this at some point, that'd be appreciated. And we can go from there.
Awesome. Thanks, Kenny. Looks like we have one item left on the agenda, which is package metadata RFC.
I added that one. Kenny, do you want to present that one or do you want me to do it? Fine either way.
You can present it if you want.
Sure. Let me share my screen. So basically, we want to start adding package metadata to the stack images to kind of give users a more accurate depiction of what's actually inside the stack without having to, Docker run it or anything like that. So the basic format would be a label on the image called io.paketo.stack.packages. And then for each package, you'd have a name, a version, and architecture. And this has not been updated yet. Apologize. But it would be a name, a version, architecture, and a description or a summary. And then there'd also be another field for the source package information with the upstream information about the source of the package. And that's pretty much it. It's just trying to add this label. We'll update the we'll update this with the source package information. One unresolved question was around the naming of this. It's like slightly misleading to say these are the packages in the stack, given that a stack refers to 2 images, and yet we're talking about the packages on this specific stack image. That being said, this ambiguousness exists in the Buildpacks project as a whole, kind of, when we say like IO Buildpacks stack.distro or things like that. And so given that the Buildpacks project itself uses that naming convention, we figured it was okay to go along with that here. Any questions on this?
Yeah, Marty, I don't know. I can see the source package added on my end in the RFC.
I dropped a link in chat. We have the RFC on a different branch. So if you click that, you should be able to see it. Or
sorry about that. I just clicked the wrong thing. Cool, here it is. Yeah. So now you got the name, version, architecture, summary for each thing, and then the source package information. And you'd have, this would be a giant array with one entry like this for each package. So it'd be pretty massive.
Is this like an extension of or like an expansion upon the mixins label that already is in images? Or am I misunderstanding this?
In a way, the mixins for the Bionic stack only include the names of each package. And then it also contains additional information like, or additional mixins that like set mixins could be a thing. And so while a lot of this might overlap, they are like fundamentally different things, I think, because mixins are like theoretically be like anything you want. Whereas this is strictly like all the information you need to know about the packages on it. But there are other, if they were theoretically, if you were using any other stack ID other than the Bionic stack ID, there's no actual specification for what the mixins labels look like. And so they could be really arbitrarily anything, which, for example, like our tiny stack, like technically mixins don't have a concrete meaning on the tiny stack in the Buildpacks project, but packages is definitely something that, you know, has meaning across all OSs and distributions.
I haven't followed any of the like stack related conversations that closely on the CMB side. Is there like background on why we want to introduce this under Paketo rather than like at the CMB side, as far as like any sort of stack specification there?
There was some conversation around that. There's nothing in the Buildpacks project at the moment that like represents information that exists on like, or that represents the contents of like the base image itself. Like everything, all the labels and things like that that exist in the Buildpack spec are kind of one level higher. And so it felt like it would be something new to add there, and certainly new to add here too. But this is kind of more of like a decision we're making to do for our stacks versus something we want to specify across the entire Buildpacks project. It's certainly possible that, you know, this could end up being something we introduce to the Buildpacks project, and then we can go back and, you know, change this to an IO Buildpacks thing and get rid of our separate label here. But we weren't sure that the Buildpacks project was necessarily the best place to do this yet, at least, if that makes sense.
I was thinking, like, had a similar question in that, you know, the Buildpack project produces the bill of materials. It'd be kind of cool if a stack could contribute things like this to the bill of materials, so it'd all end up in one place. So when someone looked at the bill of materials to see what was installed, it would include things that were in the run image, like packages. But I think one thing we've done on the Java Buildpack side, like with maybe our custom labels or custom environment Buildpack, I think it can be useful to take things that maybe should be core features of the CMB spec and sort of pilot them in Paketo. And then we can use that example to show how it's useful to structure the conversation in Buildpacks. Like, just because this probably should be part of the Buildpack spec doesn't mean it's not right to do this now.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. In asking the question, I certainly wasn't saying this shouldn't be at this level. I just wanted to understand the background of like whether or not this had already been discussed and maybe rejected at the CNB level, or if this is some sort of piloting of a new idea.
I'm new to this whole thing, but is there a reason that this is like doesn't have anything about licenses, or is that a separate concern?
There's definitely a feature where we would ideally like to add the license information, but that information is much harder to attain than the information that's here. And so this felt like a good initial easy win. And we would kind of defer the license conversation for a little bit longer and first get something like this that's usable out the door.
Thanks.
Is there any harm though in just adding a dedicated field for licenses, even if you don't have that information right out the gate?
Um,
I'm just saying, is the potential just like there being an empty string for licenses like a big enough problem where it would be worth the extra, I'm not gonna say hassle, but yeah, hassle to, you know, in 4 months or whatever, to open another RFC to add a single field to this labels structure?
I don't think I think it might be a little odd to keep a license field that has an empty string for every single package. for, potentially a few months. That from a user perspective, that doesn't seem great. But beyond that, I think it might be better if we could wait until we're like sure it's something we can do in a sustainable way. I mean, I imagine it is, but we haven't exactly found a way to do it yet. And so I'd be hesitant to commit in this RFC that like that's something we're going to add before we are sure that we can do it well.
Are these fields intended to be like all required or optional, or what happens if I don't have a summary or that kind of a thing? What's the behavior supposed to look like?
I'm not entirely sure what you mean by that question. Like these are metadata fields we're proposing to add to the stacks that we ship. And so, or that the Paketo project ships.
So you would, okay, so you would always fill in all of these things, basically.
Yeah, presumably, to the best of
we
our
get the
ability.
information from dpackage, and so I'm not positive that they're all required in dpackage, but we have yet to see something where any of these are blank in our stacks.
But if they are, is it like an omit if empty, or will the field still appear, but it will just be whatever, like just an empty string value?
As written, it would be an empty string. I don't know if that's
cool.
What we want. We didn't really put any thought into it beyond that.
Not directly related to this RFC, but it'd be really cool if in the future we were thinking about cutting like releases on the Stacks repo in GitHub and sort of aggregating some of this information in release notes. Might make it easy for folks to come and see what's changed between different Stack versions, which I think would also help people understand why they might want to upgrade. Like we tell people to trust us that you should always be pulling the latest stack, but it really hammers it home.
We have something like that right here.
Oh, wow.
Each stack has its own release repo that has pointers to all the images and a receipt diff on anything that's changed. And if there was a patch due SN, it has that information.
That's very cool. I was looking at the stacks repo. I didn't realize this existed.
Yeah, we spun out release repos for each stack.
Could you link to those in the stacks repo at some point?
Sure. Good idea.
Cool.
Just to clarify, because you said stacks, so these annotations would go on both the build image and the run image, and their values would be the contents of that image, right?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Yeah, that's kind of like the unresolved questions by shedding, like, because technically a stack does refer to the pair of images. So we weren't sure if like we recognize the kind of slightly ambiguous nature of like the label being io.paketo.stack.packages. But that was a good question, Arjun.
Yeah, this also comes back to Emily's comment about ultimately getting these types of annotations into like a bill of materials. The current, on the CNB side, the current understanding of bill of materials is not just what ultimately ends up in the run image, but then there's also a subsection that's like, these are all the artifacts that were used to build the image as well. And so it may be worthwhile to definitely think about what that might look like in terms of being able to say, here are the packages that are available in the stack that's underlying this run image, but also the stack that was used to build this image has these other packages that are available. Yeah.
That's a good point.
I have one last question on this. I know, Marty, we were slacking a little bit about this, but we also ship like the Docker file based images today, like the ones without the -cnb in it. Are there any plans to do something like that for those images? And if we do, I'm just wondering what like the label might look like for that.
That is a good question. I was actually just thinking about that myself. I don't think there's any reason we can't use this label for the base image, the Docker file images too. Those are still Paketo images. And this RFC doesn't actually explicitly say which images we were talking about. So there's no reason we can't do this on both images. I don't see any reason not to.
We currently don't put any CNB metadata in the Docker file list image. So just consistency would be a reason. If we add this, we might want to add all of the other things, in which case the only difference then would be we're adding a user for the CNB image.
But the other CNB, this isn't CNB metadata, right? This is like image this is just about what exists on the image. Like mixins would be something you'd only want on the CNB image because that's like a CNB concept, but this is just packages existing on an image.
That's a good point.
Forgive my ignorance here, but what's the purpose of shipping a base image that doesn't have like CNB constructs on it?
It's pretty much solely for the use of people who want to extend our stack images. Right now, they would, without those images, they would have to like create a Docker file and then like switch the user to root before they could do anything. So this just makes it easier for them to like stick in a Docker file saying like from our base image and then do whatever you want. Well, if there's no other questions here, this is an RFC in the Stacks repo, and hopefully soon we'll have a Stacks team that can accept this, but just want to put it out there for comments.
Awesome. Thanks, Marty.
Sure.
Does anybody have anything they'd like to add before we wrap the meeting up? Cool. I dropped the ball on this at the beginning because I was a little bit late, but I meant to say welcome to Andy and Emily. We're happy to have you guys here. And yeah, that concludes our working group meeting for today. See you all next week.
Thanks, Sophie.
See y'all.
Yeah.